He popped the champagne cork like a
You have the right
gunshot.
to remain silent.
Brian Thorne
Anything
had
you
just
say
won
can and will be
everything
used against
in
you.
the divorce. The $40 million mansion, the billion-dollar company, and the cruelest prize of all, custody of their two children.
Chloe.
His ex-wife Emily
best
walked out
part
of
of
that
the
courtroom with nothing but a $50,000 check and a broken heart. He called her dead weight at his victory party. He moved his 26-year-old mistress
We need to
into her
verify the
bedroom.
alibi for the 15th.
He turned
That's
her
where the red
own
string
daughter
ends.
against her.
Brian
Brian
I'll
thought
get the forensics
he had
report
destroyed her
immediately.
completely. But here's what Brian did not know. He did not know that Emily's quiet, wheelchair-bound father was not just a retired timber merchant. He did not know that the code powering his entire billion-dollar empire was stolen. And he did not know that the woman he threw away like garbage was about to become the most dangerous enemy he ever faced. This is the story of how a billionaire celebrated too early, and how the queen he sacrificed came back to take his entire kingdom. Value statement and lesson. Before we begin, I want you to know why this story matters. This is not just entertainment. This is a reminder that your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It is determined by how you rise after they try to break you. If you have ever felt invisible in your own marriage, if you have ever been told you contributed nothing while you held everything together, if you have ever watched someone take credit for your sacrifices, this story is for you. The lesson is simple but powerful. The queen is the most powerful piece on the board. Never let anyone make you forget that. Meaning of the story. At its heart, this is a story about patience, resilience, and the quiet strength that women carry when the world underestimates them. It is about the difference between power and value. Brian had power. He had money, influence, and lawyers, but Emily had value. She had truth, she had people who believed in her, and she had the one thing Brian never possessed: the ability to love something more than herself. This story proves that storms do not destroy us. They reveal us. They force our roots deeper until nothing can pull us out. The fluorescent lights of the King County Superior Courtroom hummed with a low, irritating buzz. To most people, it was just background noise. To Emily Carter, it sounded like a countdown to the end of her life. She sat at the defendant's table, wearing a simple navy dress she had bought at Target 3 days ago. It was the nicest thing she owned now that Brian had frozen their joint accounts. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, steady as stone, but inside she was dying. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of building a life, Usam, raising children, and loving a man who was now sitting across the aisle. Looking at her like she was a piece of furniture he had finally decided to throw away. Brian Thorne looked magnificent, and he knew it. His charcoal Armani suit cost more than most people's monthly rent. His silver cufflinks caught the light every time he gestured to his lawyer. He was 42 years old, the CEO of Thorne Technologies, and according to Forbes magazine, one of the 50 most influential people in American tech. He was also, as Emily had discovered 8 months ago, sleeping with his 26-year-old marketing director. Next to Brian sat Sebastian Cole, a lawyer whose reputation preceded him like a thundercloud. Sebastian was known in Seattle legal circles as the Shark. He had never lost a divorce case. Looking at the smug expression on his face, Emily understood why. Her own attorney, a kind but clearly outmatched woman named Patricia, squeezed her hand under the table. Judge Harrison, a stern man in his 60s, cleared his throat and began reading the ruling. Given the prenuptial agreement signed in 2009, the judge stated, peering over his spectacles, and the evidence presented regarding Mrs. Carter's lack of direct financial contribution to the Thorne Technologies Corporation, the court rules in favor of the plaintiff. Emily felt the words hit her like physical blows. The marital home in Medina, the judge continued, along with primary custody of the minor children, the investment portfolio, and all assets directly tied to Thorne Technologies, will remain with Mr. Thorne. Primary custody. The words echoed in Emily's skull. He was taking her children. Mrs. Carter is awarded a lump sum settlement of $50,000 and personal effects. The prenuptial agreement is deemed valid and enforceable. $50,000. It was less than Brian spent on wine in a single quarter. It was less than the watch currently glinting on his wrist. Emily heard Brian let out a breath beside her. She heard Sebastian whisper something that sounded like clean sweep. She heard the quiet shuffle of papers being organized, the case already closed in their minds. But she could not move. She could not breathe. She was trying to understand how 15 years of her life had just been reduced to a single piece of paper and a check that would not even cover a year of rent in Seattle. The prenup, she remembered signing it. She had been 23 years old, madly in love with a brilliant computer science student who had promised her the world. The document had been thick, filled with legal jargon she did not understand. Brian had told her it was just a formality. His parents insisted, he had said. It does not mean anything, Em. I love you. We are going to be together forever. She had signed it without reading every page. She had trusted him, and buried in that trust was a clause she never knew existed. If she failed to maintain active employment contributing to family income, she forfeited her claim to marital assets. She had been a stay-at-home mother, by choice, by his request. I need you home with the kids, Emily. Brian had said it 100 times over the years. My company needs me right now. The kids need stability. You are so good with them. I could not do this without you holding down the fort. Holding down the fort. That was what he had called it. As if raising 2 children, managing a household, attending every school event, every doctor's appointment, every soccer game and piano recital, was simply holding down the fort. The court is adjourned, Judge Harrison announced, banging his gavel. Emily watched Brian stand, shake Sebastian's hand, and turn to look at her. She had expected triumph in his eyes. She had expected cruelty. What she saw was worse. She saw nothing. She saw the same expression he might give a stranger on the street. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, 4,000 packed lunches, and 89 parent-teacher conferences attended alone while he worked late. And he looked at her like she was no one. Brian walked out of the courtroom without a word. Emily remained seated, unable to make her legs work. Patricia touched her shoulder gently. Emily, I am so sorry. We can appeal. There might be grounds to challenge the prenup validity, but they both knew it was over. Brian had won. He had not just won. He had annihilated her. Emily finally stood on shaking legs and walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was bright, filled with the mundane bustle of other cases, other lives, other tragedies, playing out in rooms just like hers. And then she saw them. Lily and Mason were waiting on a bench near the exit, supervised by Brian's assistant. Lily was 14, with her father's dark hair and her mother's hazel eyes. Mason was 11, still young enough to look confused by everything happening around him. Emily rushed toward them, her arms already opening for an embrace. But Lily stepped back. Mom. Lily's voice was cold in a way Emily had never heard before. Dad told us what happened. Emily's arms froze, mid-reach. Baby, I do not know what he said, but this is complicated. Adults, sometimes. He said you did not fight for us? Lily's eyes were hard. He said you just wanted money. He said you were going to leave us anyway, so he had to protect us. That is not true. Emily's voice cracked. Lily, that is not true at all. I would never leave you. I love you more than anything in this world." Mason broke from the bench and ran into Emily's arms, crying. But Lily remained where she was, arms crossed, face closed. Brian appeared behind them, placing his hands on Lily's shoulders. "Kids, the car is waiting. Say goodbye to your mother. You will see her on alternating weekends." Alternating weekends. The phrase was a knife in Emily's chest. "Why did you not try harder, Mom?" Lily asked, her voice cracking with teenage anger and genuine pain. "Why did you just give up?" Before Emily could answer, Brian guided both children away. Mason looked back, tears streaming down his face. Lily did not. Emily stood alone on the courthouse steps and watched her children get into a black SUV with tinted windows. The door closed. The car pulled away. And just like that, Emily Carter lost her husband, her home, her money, and her children's trust. All in the span of 1 hour. She did not know it yet, but this was only the beginning. 3 days after the courthouse massacre, Emily found herself staring at water-stained ceiling tiles in a budget inn off Highway 99. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. The bedspread was a shade of brown that seemed designed to hide stains rather than complement any decor. Through the thin walls, she could hear a television playing in the next room, some daytime talk show where people screamed at each other about infidelity. Appropriate, Emily thought bitterly. Her $50,000 settlement was already bleeding out. First month's rent on a tiny studio apartment in a part of Seattle she would have been afraid to walk through a year ago. A used Honda Civic with 140,000 miles on it. A retainer for a family law attorney who specialized in custody appeals. Diana Cross came highly recommended, but she had warned Emily during their first meeting that the case was going to be an uphill battle. "Brian's legal team is elite," Diana had said, not unkindly. "They have painted you as an absent mother who prioritized personal leisure over career contribution. It is absurd, of course, but absurd arguments win cases when you have expensive lawyers making them." Emily had nodded numbly. She had spent her entire adult life being a mother and wife. She had no career to speak of. She had let her nursing license lapse years ago because Brian insisted he needed her at home, and now that very choice was being used to destroy her. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Emily reached for it without thinking. It was a Google alert, one she had set up years ago and forgotten to delete. Brian Thorne, the notification read. She knew she should not look. She knew it would only cause pain, but her thumb moved before her brain could stop it. The headline was from a Seattle Society blog. Tech billionaire throws freedom party. New girlfriend, Chloe Myers, stuns in $15,000 dress. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. She clicked through to the article. Photos loaded slowly on the motel's weak Wi-Fi, each one another blow to her already shattered heart. There was her home, the 6,000-square-foot waterfront mansion in Medina that she had spent 5 years decorating. The place where Mason took his first steps. The kitchen where she had taught Lily to bake her grandmother's apple pie. It was unrecognizable. The elegant cream-colored walls she had carefully chosen were now draped in neon lights. Her antique furniture had been replaced with sleek white leather sofas. A DJ booth sat where her piano used to be. Champagne towers glittered on tables that had once held family dinners. And there was Brian, her husband of 15 years, the father of her children. He stood on the balcony overlooking the party, arm wrapped around a blonde woman young enough to be Emily's student, Chloe Myers. Emily had met her once at a company event. She remembered thinking the girl seemed nice, bit easy, if a bit vapid. She remembered Brian dismissing Emily's concerns about how much time he was spending with his marketing director. "She is just an employee, Em. Do not be paranoid." The caption under the photo made Emily want to vomit. Brian Thorne toasts to cutting the dead weight as friends cheer. Dead weight. That was what she was to him now. 15 years of partnership, of building a life together, of sacrificing her own ambitions so he could achieve his. And she was dead weight. Emily barely made it to the bathroom before she threw up. She was still sitting on the cold tile floor 20 minutes later when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Mason's name. "Hello?" Emily answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mom?" Mason's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you there?" "I am here, baby." Emily pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "Are you okay?" "Why are you whispering? I'm in my closet. Dad does not know I am calling. He took my phone, but I found Lily's old one." Emily's heart clenched. "What is wrong, sweetheart?" "Mom, Chloe is moving into your room." Mason's voice cracked. "She threw away your garden, all your flowers. She said they were depressing." Emily closed her eyes. The garden she had planted when they first moved in. The roses her mother had given her cuttings from before she passed away. Gone. "Baby, I am so sorry," Emily whispered. "I'm going to fix this. I promise. Lily said you are not coming back. Is that true?" Emily could not answer. The words stuck in her throat like broken glass. "Mom, I saved one of your roses," Mason continued. "I hid it in my closet. It is dying, though. Like everything." There was a noise in the background. Mason gasped. "I have to go." He hung up before Emily could say goodbye. She sat in that motel bathroom, on that cold tile floor, holding a dead phone, in a dead room, and wondered how her life had collapsed so completely in less than a week. The next morning, Emily forced herself out of bed. She had a meeting with Diana Cross to discuss the custody appeal strategy. Diana's office was in a modest building downtown, nothing like the gleaming tower where Sebastian Cole practiced. But the moment Emily walked in, she felt something she had not felt since the divorce. She felt like someone was actually on her side. "I will be honest with you, Emily," Diana said, leaning forward across her cluttered desk. "Brian's legal team is top tier. They have already painted you as an absent mother who prioritized personal leisure over career contribution. I was raising his children." Emily heard her own voice rise with indignation. "That was my job. He asked me to stay home." "I know." Diana's eyes were sympathetic. "The law does not always see it that way. But there might be one angle we can use." "What angle?" "If we can prove Brian is an unfit parent," Diana said carefully. "Drugs, abuse, criminal behavior. If we have evidence of that, we have a shot at reopening custody." Emily thought about the late nights Brian spent locked in his home office, the paranoid behavior, the times she had walked in and he had quickly closed his laptop, but she had never seen anything concrete. She had no proof. "Maybe," Emily said hesitantly. "I do not know. There was always something off, but I never found anything specific." Diana nodded slowly. "Maybe does not win custody cases. I need evidence." She slid a notepad across the desk. "Let me tell you something I tell every woman who walks through that door. Document everything. Texts, emails, financial statements. The court does not care about your feelings. It cares about paper trails. Start building yours." Emily took the notepad. It felt like holding a lifeline. "And Emily," Diana added as she stood to leave, "find out what Brian was hiding in that office. Because men like him always have something to hide." 2 weeks after the motel bathroom breakdown, Emily was starting to feel something other than despair. She was starting to feel angry. Anger, she discovered, was useful. Anger got her out of bed in the morning. Anger made her drive to Diana's office and fill out paperwork. Anger made her take notes and document every communication from Brian's lawyers. But anger also made her accept an invitation she should have declined. Rachel Bennett had been Emily's college roommate. They had stayed in touch over the years through birthday cards, and occasional lunches, the kind of friendship that exists more in memory than in present reality. When Rachel texted suggesting they meet for lunch, Emily thought it might be nice to see a friendly face. She was wrong. The restaurant Rachel chose was expensive, the kind of place where Emily could not afford to eat anymore. Rachel was already seated when Emily arrived, perfectly styled in designer clothes that probably cost more than Emily's monthly motel bill. "Emily!" Rachel stood and air-kissed both her cheeks. "Oh, honey, you look like you have been through it." Emily managed a weak smile. "It has been a rough few weeks." They sat. Rachel ordered a $40 salad. Emily ordered the cheapest thing on the menu and tried not to think about her dwindling bank account. "So," Rachel said, leaning forward with an expression of concern that did not quite reach her eyes, "tell me everything. What really happened?" And Emily, desperate for connection, for someone who understood, began to talk. She told Rachel about the prenup clause, about losing the house, about Brian's party, about Lily's cold rejection and Mason's whispered phone call. Rachel listened, nodding sympathetically, asking probing questions. "So you really got nothing?" Rachel asked. "Nothing at all?" 50,000, Emily said, which is basically nothing when you consider. "And did Brian ever mention anyone else? Before Chloe, I mean?" Emily frowned. "What do you mean? I just wonder if there were others." Rachel's eyes gleamed with something that was not quite sympathy. "What was Chloe like when you met her?" Something cold settled in Emily's stomach. This did not feel like concern. This felt like interrogation. "I should go." Emily stood abruptly. "I have an appointment." "Oh, already?" Rachel pouted. "We barely caught up." Emily left money on the table and walked toward the exit. She was almost at the door when she heard Rachel's voice behind her, apparently on a phone call. "Girl, she looks terrible. Like Target clearance rack terrible." And she had no idea about Chloe. Can you imagine? Married 15 years and did not know her husband was sleeping with a 26-year-old? I would simply not be that stupid. Emily kept walking. She pushed through the restaurant door and into the gray Seattle afternoon, her face burning with humiliation. She passed a bookstore. A display in the window caught her eye. "Girl, wash your face," the title read. "Girl, wash your fake friend's mouth out with soap," Emily muttered under her breath. A woman standing nearby laughed. Emily had not realized anyone was close enough to hear. "Bad day?" the woman asked. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Bad decade," Emily said without thinking. The woman smiled. "I have had a few of those." She reached into her pocket and handed Emily a business card. "Margaret Douglas," the card read. "Private investigator." "You look like a woman who needs answers," Margaret said. "First consultation is free. Call me Maggie." Emily looked at the card, then at Maggie. Something in the older woman's face reminded her of Diana Cross. That same sense that here was someone who might actually be on her side. "What kind of answers?" Emily asked. "The kind that help you fight back," Maggie said. "The kind that men like your ex-husband do not want anyone to find." Emily pocketed the card. 2 weeks later, she was sitting in Maggie's cramped office, surrounded by filing cabinets and case files, listening to the private investigator explain what she had uncovered. "Chloe Myers and Brian started their affair 2 years before the divorce," Maggie said, sliding a folder across her desk. "Not 8 months ago, like the tabloids reported. 2 years." Emily felt sick. 2 years? Here are credit card statements showing Brian used company funds to buy Chloe a condo in Bellevue. Maggie continued, "A Mercedes, about $50,000 in jewelry, all while he was still married to you." Emily flipped through the documents. The evidence was damning. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, flight records for romantic getaways she knew nothing about, and this. Maggie pulled out another folder. Text messages we recovered from a backup cloud server Brian forgot to delete. He was coaching Lily to distrust you. Emily read the messages, her hands shaking. Tell Lily her mom chose this. Brian had written to his assistant. Tell her Emily was going to leave anyway. Kids need to know which parent actually wants them. Emily felt tears streaming down her face. He turned my daughter against me. Yes, Maggie said bluntly. But now we have proof. This is parental alienation, Emily. It is illegal. Diana can use this. Emily called Diana that afternoon. The attorney's voice was excited for the first time since they had met. This is good, Diana said. This is really good. I will file a motion on Monday. Emily, I think you might actually win this. Emily hung up and cried, but for the first time in weeks, they were tears of hope. She called Mason on the phone she had bought for secret calls. Baby, she whispered, Mommy is coming home. The weekend passed in anxious anticipation. Emily could barely sleep. She imagined the look on Brian's face when the evidence was presented. She imagined holding her children again. On Monday morning, she arrived at Diana's office 30 minutes early, practically vibrating with nervous energy. But Diana's face was pale. Sit down, Emily. Emily's stomach dropped. What is wrong? Did something happen with the filing? Diana slid a document across the desk. It was a restraining order. Brian filed this an hour ago. Diana's voice was carefully controlled. He is claiming you hired a private investigator to stalk him and his children. He is saying you are unstable, obsessive, and a danger to Lily and Mason. That is insane. Emily grabbed the document. Maggie was investigating him, not stalking anyone. It does not matter what the reality is, Diana said quietly. The judge granted a temporary order. You cannot come within 500 feet of your children until the hearing. Emily felt the room tilt. Until when? 3 months. 3 months? The words barely came out. I cannot see my kids for 3 months? Diana reached across the desk and squeezed Emily's hand. I am sorry. He outmaneuvered us. He knew we were coming. Emily sat in that office, holding a restraining order that called her a danger to her own children, and felt the last flicker of hope die in her chest. She had tried to fight back, and it had made everything worse. The catastrophes came one after another, like waves in a storm, each one hitting before Emily could recover from the last. 2 days after the restraining order, her landlord called. Mrs. Carter, I hate to do this. He sounded nervous rather than apologetic. But I received a call from a law firm. They expressed concerns about your, mental state. They suggested you might be a liability to the property. Emily's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I am not renewing your lease. You have 30 days. 3 days after that, her bank called. Mrs. Carter, your accounts have been frozen pending investigation. A claim has been filed stating you misappropriated marital funds. Misappropriated? Emily's voice rose. That was my settlement money. The court gave it to me. I understand, ma'am. The bank representative sounded bored. But until the claim is resolved, we cannot release the funds. And then, on a Tuesday evening, that should have been ordinary, but would haunt Emily for years, her phone buzzed with a text message from Lily. Mom, Dad showed me the restraining order. He said you tried to kidnap us. I do not want to see you anymore. Please stop contacting Mason too. You are scaring him. Goodbye. Emily read the message 17 times, she counted. Her daughter, her baby girl, the child she had rocked to sleep and taught to read and loved with every fiber of her being, was asking her to disappear. She got in her car. She drove without thinking, without destination, just needing to move, to escape the suffocating weight of her own destruction. She found herself at a bridge overlooking the river. It was a pretty spot during the day. Joggers passed by. Families walked their dogs. But at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, it was empty. Emily parked. She got out of the car. She walked to the railing and looked down at the dark water rushing below. She stood there for a long time. Her phone rang. She almost did not answer, but something made her look at the screen. It was Maggie. "Emily, where are you? I have been calling for hours." Emily's voice came out flat and strange. "I am looking at the water." There was a pause on the other end of the line. A long, careful pause. "Emily, I need you to listen to me very carefully." Maggie's voice was steady and calm, the kind of calm that came from training. "I found something big, but I need you alive to use it. Do you understand me? I need you to drive away from that bridge right now." "What is the point, Maggie?" Emily heard herself say. "He already won. He took everything." "No, he did not." Maggie's voice cut through the fog in Emily's brain. "Because I just found out who Brian Thorne really stole his company from. And Emily, it was not his investors. It was not his partners. It was you." Emily blinked. "What are you talking about? Come to my office. Right now." "And Emily," Maggie's voice softened, "the game is about to change, but you have to be alive to play it. Please, get in your car." Emily looked at the water one more time. She thought about Lily's text. She thought about Mason hiding in his closet, protecting a dying rose because it reminded him of her. She got in her car. It was 2 in the morning when Emily arrived at Maggie's office. The private investigator was waiting with coffee and a wall covered in documents, photographs, and red string connecting pieces of evidence. "Okay, Emily." Maggie guided her to a chair. "I need you to tell me about your father." Emily frowned. "My dad? He is retired. He lives in Oregon. He had a stroke last year. He is in a wheelchair now. What does he have to do with any of this?" "Emily, what did your father do before he retired?" "He was in logistics," Emily said slowly. "Timber industry. He had a software company in the 80s that tracked lumber shipments, but it went under when the industry collapsed." Maggie slid a folder across the table. "Your father's company did not go under. He sold it to the Department of Defense for $80 million in 1989. Emily stared at the documents. "That is impossible. He never—" "We were not rich. The money went into a trust," Maggie continued. "But here's what is interesting. The core technology, a logistics algorithm called Sterling 4, was never included in the sale. Your father kept it. He patented it under a family trust." "The Sterling Family Trust." She looked at Emily intently. "And Emily, you are the sole beneficiary." "I do not understand." Emily shook her head. "What does old lumber software have to do with Brian?" Maggie pulled up code comparisons on her computer. "Because old lumber software is the foundation of Thorne Technologies. I had a forensic coder analyze Brian's so-called breakthrough artificial intelligence. It is not original. It is a modified version of Sterling 4. Your father's algorithm. Your algorithm." Emily's hands began to shake. How did Brian get it? The answer came to her before Maggie could speak. The memory surfaced like a body from deep water. College. Brian, struggling with his thesis. Emily staying up late to help him, drawing on the logic patterns she had grown up watching her father develop. "I helped him," Emily whispered. "I thought I was just helping him optimize his program. I did not realize." "You gave him your father's life work," Maggie finished, without knowing it. "Oh my God, it gets better." Maggie pulled out another document. "I found a licensing agreement your father made Brian sign before your wedding. As long as Brian was married to a Sterling family member, he could use the code for $1 a year. But if he ever divorced you, the license is revoked retroactively." Emily's eyes widened. Retroactively means every dollar Thorne Technologies ever made was based on stolen intellectual property. Maggie smiled grimly. If you enforce the trust, you do not just get custody, Emily. You get everything. The drive to Oregon felt longer than Emily remembered. Or maybe time just moved differently now, stretched thin by exhaustion and shock and the faint trembling of hope she was afraid to acknowledge. The Sterling Family Care Center was nothing like the cold, institutional name suggested. It was a converted farmhouse surrounded by gardens. The kind of place where retired professors and artists spent their final years playing chess and arguing about politics. Emily found her father in the garden, sitting in his wheelchair near a bed of roses that reminded her painfully of her own destroyed flowers. He was playing chess with a nurse, his weathered hands moving pieces with careful precision. Marcus Sterling was 72 years old. The stroke last year had slowed his speech and confined him to a wheelchair. Brian had mocked him at parties, called him a senile old man who could barely string a sentence together. But when Marcus looked up at his daughter, his eyes were sharp as ever. "Hello, sweetheart." His voice was raspy but clear. Maggie called. "She said you finally figured it out." Emily dropped into the chair across from him. "You knew? You knew Brian stole your code, and you did not tell me." "I have known for 10 years, Marcus said calmly. "I was waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For you to be ready to fight." Emily felt anger flare in her chest. "You let me marry a thief. You let me waste 15 years of my life on a man who was using me. How could you not warn me?" Marcus wheeled himself closer. His eyes, the same hazel as Emily's own, were filled with a sadness she had never seen before. "Emily, when you married Brian, I saw who he was. A hungry man, ambitious, not evil, not thin, but empty. I hoped love would fill that emptiness. I hoped you could make him better." He reached out and took her hand. "I was wrong. But Emily, you would not have listened. You loved him. And I learned long ago that parents cannot protect their children from their own choices. We can only be there when they are ready to choose differently." "Why now?" Emily asked. "Why tell me now?" "Because now you are ready," Marcus said simply. "Now you have lost everything, and now you understand what he really is." He reached into his cardigan pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. Emily recognized it immediately. It was the chess set she had grown up watching her father play with. "Do you remember this?" Marcus asked. Emily opened the box. Inside, resting on faded velvet, was a single chess piece. A queen, carved from dark walnut. "My grandfather carved this in 1918, Marcus said. "During the First World War, he told me something I have never forgotten." He looked at Emily with fierce love. "He said the king is the goal, but the queen is the power. A wise man protects his queen. A fool sacrifices her." Marcus closed Emily's fingers around the piece. Brian sacrificed his queen. Now, let us show him what that costs. Over the next few hours, Marcus explained everything. The Sterling 4 algorithm, the licensing agreement he had made Brian sign, the clause that revoked everything if Brian ever divorced a Sterling family member. "But why would he sign something like that?" Emily asked. "Brian is paranoid. He reads every contract 3 times, because he was nobody when he signed it." Marcus smiled. He was a struggling graduate student marrying into a family he thought had nothing. He assumed the clause was meaningless. "And you let him think that." "I let him think a lot of things," Marcus said. "I let him think I was a retired timber merchant. I let him think my company collapsed. I let him think I was too senile to notice what he was doing with my code." He chuckled, a dry sound like rustling leaves. "Men like Brian underestimate everyone. It is their greatest weakness." "But the federal contracts," Emily said slowly. Maggie mentioned something about the Department of Defense. Marcus nodded. Sterling Logistics was not just a timber company. In the 1970s and 80s, we were the primary contractor for military supply chains. Who do you think moved the missile silos? Who do you think designed the logistics for classified operations? Emily stared at her father. She had grown up thinking he was just a quiet businessman who loved chess and gardening. I retired in 1998, Marcus continued. But in certain circles, people like me never really retire. We just go dormant. And now? Now my son-in-law has woken a sleeping giant. Marcus's eyes hardened. And worse, he broke my daughter's heart. That made it personal. Emily felt something shift inside her. The despair that had been drowning her for weeks began to recede, replaced by something sharper, something with teeth. I want to destroy him, she said quietly. I want to take back everything he stole. Then we will, Marcus said. But we will do it properly. We will do it completely. And when we are finished, Brian Thorne will not just lose his company, he will lose everything. He handed her a phone number. Call this woman, Diana Cross. Tell her Marcus Sterling sent you. Tell her it is time to assemble the team. Emily looked at the number. I already know Diana. She is my lawyer. I know. Marcus smiled. Who do you think recommended her? The war room was Maggie Douglas's office, transformed over the past week into a command center. Maps covered one wall. Financial documents covered another. A whiteboard in the corner held a timeline of Brian's crimes, written in Maggie's precise handwriting. Emily stood at the center of it all, no longer the broken woman who had stood on a bridge contemplating the end. She was still exhausted, still grieving. But now she had something she had not had in months. She had purpose. Around her sat her team. Diana Cross, family attorney, perched on the edge of a desk with a legal pad covered in notes. She had been quietly furious ever since learning the full scope of Brian's manipulation. Maggie Douglas, private investigator, moved between documents with the focus of a hunting dog on a scent. She had been working 18-hour days since the bridge phone call. Dr. Helen Crawford, forensic code auditor, sat in the corner with a laptop, running comparisons between Sterling 4 and Thorne Technologies' core algorithms. She was a formidable woman in her 50s who had testified in dozens of corporate espionage cases. And Carla Mitchell, Emily's old nursing school friend turned paralegal, who had arrived unannounced 2 days ago with a suitcase and a declaration that she was not leaving until that bastard paid for what he did. Okay, Maggie began. Here is what we have. She pointed to the timeline. Brian Thorne built his entire company on stolen code. Sterling 4 was designed by Marcus Sterling to track lumber shipments, but the underlying logic can optimize any system. Supply chains, traffic patterns, human behavior. Brian modified it into what he calls Thorne AI, but 87% of the core architecture is directly lifted from Sterling's patent. Helen nodded. I have 4,000 pages of documentation proving it. Every significant innovation at Thorne Technologies traces back to that original code. Which means? Emily asked. Diana answered. Which means the licensing agreement your father had Brian sign is enforceable. The moment Brian divorced you, every dollar his company ever made became proceeds from stolen intellectual property. Retroactive liability. Carla whistled. That is billions of dollars. But it gets worse for Brian, Maggie continued. Or better for us, depending on your perspective. She clicked to a new document. While investigating Brian's finances, I found something he definitely did not want anyone to find. A project called Velor. Velor? Emily frowned. I never heard him mention that. Because it is illegal, Maggie said bluntly. Brian modified the Sterling 4 code to do more than optimize logistics. He turned it into a surveillance tool. Thorne Technologies apps have been secretly recording audio from users' phones, even when the apps are closed, harvesting banking passwords, recording private conversations, collecting medical information. Emily felt sick. And then what? Maggie's face was grim. And then selling it to foreign intelligence brokers. Brian has been committing espionage, Emily, for money. The room was silent. How do you know this? Emily finally asked. Because I am not the only one investigating him, Maggie said. I have contacts in federal law enforcement. They have been building a case for 18 months. They were waiting for the right moment to move. And that moment is now, Diana said. Because now we have leverage they do not have. We have you. We have the Sterling Trust. We have the legal right to revoke everything. So what is the plan? Emily asked. Carla jumped in. I have been coordinating with a network of women, divorced moms who have been through custody battles with wealthy men. They have resources, connections, and they are angry on your behalf. The plan has 3 phases, Diana said. Legal, financial, and personal. She ticked them off on her fingers. Legal. I file a motion to vacate the restraining order using Maggie's evidence of parental alienation. Those text messages Brian sent coaching Lily are damning. Financial. Helen delivers her forensic audit to the SEC. She also delivers it to the FBI agents investigating Valor. They coordinate their moves. Personal. Maggie smiled coldly. We let Brian think he has won. We let him get comfortable. And then we strike. What about Chloe? Emily asked. She is living in my house. With my children. Maggie's smile widened. About that, I have been digging into Miss Myers, and she is not just a mistress. She pulled up financial records. Chloe has been embezzling from Thorn Technologies for 2 years. She set up shell companies and has been funneling corporate funds into her personal accounts. About $4.8 million so far. Emily blinked. She is stealing from Brian? She is stealing from everyone. But here is the best part. Chloe has a boyfriend. A boyfriend? A DJ named Trent. They have been together since before Chloe started working at Thorn Technologies. Brian is not her endgame. He is her ATM. She is planning to disappear the moment she hits 5 million. Emily let out a laugh that surprised even her. That is actually hilarious. Karma is undefeated, Carla said with satisfaction. So when do we move? Emily asked. 3 weeks, Diana said. We need Helen's report finalized. We need the FBI ready. And we need the restraining order lifted so you can be there for the finale. Emily looked around the room, at these women who had rallied around her, who believed her when the legal system did not, who were fighting for her when she could barely fight for herself. I forgot what this felt like, she said quietly. What? Maggie asked. Having people in my corner? Diana squeezed her shoulder. Get used to it. You are not alone anymore. 3 weeks later, the restraining order was vacated. Emily stood outside a family services building, waiting for the supervised visitation that had been granted as part of the ongoing custody review. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. The door opened, a social worker emerged, followed by Mason. The moment he saw Emily, Mason broke into a run. He slammed into her arms with enough force to knock her back a step. Mom, his voice was muffled against her shoulder. Mom, I missed you so much. Emily held him tight, tears streaming down her face. I missed you too, baby. Every single day. Over Mason's shoulder, she saw Lily emerge. Her daughter stood awkwardly near the door, arms crossed, but she was not running away. She was not glaring with hatred. She was just looking at Emily with something that might have been uncertainty. Emily gently released Mason and approached her daughter. Lily, I know you are angry. I know your father told you things about me, and I am not going to stand here and tell you he lied, because I think part of you already knows the truth. Lily's jaw tightened. I am just going to tell you one thing. Emily continued. I love you. I have never stopped loving you. And everything I am doing, everything is for you and your brother. Dad said you went crazy. Lily's voice was small. He said you were dangerous. Do I look crazy to you? Lily studied her mother for a long moment. No, she finally said. You look different, stronger. I am stronger, Emily agreed, and I am going to prove it to you. Just watch. The visitation went better than Emily had hoped. Mason talked nonstop about school, about his friends, about the rose cutting he had secretly replanted at Grandpa's house. It is growing, Mom, he said excitedly. There's a whole bush now. Lily was quieter, but she stayed close. She asked questions about where Emily was living, what she was doing. She did not hug Emily when the visitation ended, but she did not pull away either. Emily drove home feeling lighter than she had in months. The tide was turning. Diana said the custody review was progressing well. Helen's report was almost ready. Maggie's FBI contacts were preparing to move on the velour investigation. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to imagine winning. She should have known better. The call came that evening. Diana's voice was tense. Emily, we have a problem. What happened? Brian found out about the Sterling Trust, Diana said. He is not waiting for us to file. He filed first. Emily's blood went cold. Filed what? A lawsuit claiming the trust is fraudulent, that your father forged the original patents, that you and Marcus are engaged in a conspiracy to defraud Thorne Technologies. That is insane. He cannot possibly prove any of that. He does not need to prove it, Diana said grimly. He just needs to delay us. He is trying to tie everything up in court for years. By the time it gets sorted out, your children will be adults. There has to be something we can do. There is. Diana hesitated. But you are not going to like it. Tell me, Brian has also subpoenaed your father's medical files. He is going to argue that Marcus is not mentally competent to manage the trust, that his stroke left him incapable of making legal decisions. Emily felt fury rise in her chest. He is going after my father? He is going nuclear, Emily, Diana said. He knows we have him cornered. This is scorched earth. Emily hung up and immediately called Marcus. Her father answered on the second ring. I know, sweetheart. His voice was calm. Let him come, Dad. He is going to try to declare you incompetent. He is going to drag you through depositions and medical evaluations and... Emily, Marcus interrupted. I survived 4 congressional hearings, 2 SEC investigations, and your mother's meatloaf. I can survive Brian Thorne. Despite everything, Emily laughed. Dad, this is serious. I am serious. Have you tasted your mother's meatloaf? May she rest in peace. But that woman was a war crime in the kitchen. Emily laughed again, harder this time. There you go, Marcus said warmly. Now stop worrying. The boy thinks he is playing checkers. We are playing chess. And it is almost time for checkmate. What do you mean? I mean, Brian just made his last move. And it is exactly the move we needed him to make. Emily frowned. I do not understand. He is attacking my competency. Marcus explained. Which means he needs to prove I am senile. Which means he needs to get my medical records. Which means he needs to go through official channels. And the moment he accesses those records, the moment he involves federal medical databases, he becomes visible. Visible to who? To the people who have been waiting for him to make a mistake, Marcus said. To my old friends and places Brian does not even know exist. Dad, what are you talking about? I told you. Marcus's voice hardened. People like me never really retire. We just go dormant. And Brian Thorne just woke up something he should have let sleep. Brian Thorne was feeling confident as he strode into the Thorne Technologies headquarters for the emergency board meeting he had called. His counter lawsuit against the Sterling Trust was filed. His lawyers assured him it was airtight. The senile old man and his pathetic daughter did not stand a chance. He stepped into the elevator, checking his reflection in the mirrored walls. He looked good. He looked like a winner. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor. Brian walked toward the boardroom, already composing the triumphant speech he would give to the board members. He pushed open the glass doors and stopped. The boardroom was not empty, but it was not filled with his allies. Emily sat at the head of the table. His seat. She was wearing a sharp navy blazer that made her look like a completely different person from the broken woman he had destroyed in court. Next to her was an older woman with gray, streaked hair and reading glasses, surrounded by stacks of files. Across from her sat a man in a dark suit that screamed federal agent. And the chairs, where his board members should have been sitting, were empty. "What the hell is this?" Brian demanded. "Security!" Emily's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Security is not coming, Brian. They work for the company, and as of 9 o'clock this morning, you do not." Brian felt the first flicker of fear. "You are delusional. I own this company. I built this company." Emily stood slowly. "Actually, you do not. You never did." She nodded to the man in the suit. "Mr. Thorne," the man said, "I am Agent David Warren with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need to discuss the Velour project." Brian's face went white. Agent Warren continued, "We have been investigating illegal data harvesting at Thorne Technologies for 18 months. Your software has been collecting and selling private user data to foreign intelligence brokers. Audio files, banking information, private communications. That is not just corporate espionage, Mr. Thorne. That is treason. That is... I did not... The data collection was standard." Brian stammered. The woman with the files spoke up. "Standard?" Dr. Helen Crawford introduced herself without standing. "You modified the Sterling 4 algorithm, which you never had the right to use, to create a backdoor that recorded users without consent. I have 4,000 pages of documentation. Every file you sold, every payment you received, every law you broke." Brian spun toward Emily. "You did this. You and your crazy father." Emily's smile was cold. "No, Brian, you did this. I just waited for you to hang yourself." She walked toward him. "Here is what is going to happen. The board has voted to remove you as CEO, effective immediately. The Sterling Trust is reclaiming all intellectual property derived from Sterling 4. Your personal assets are being frozen pending federal investigation. The prenup..." Brian grasped at straws. The prenup protected your assets from me in a divorce." Emily cut him off. "It did not protect you from the FBI." Brian's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. "Oh, and Brian," Emily continued, "the board members who are not here, they were notified yesterday that the 3 shell companies they invested in, the ones you promised would make them rich, were actually Chloe Myers's personal accounts. She has been stealing from all of you." "Chloe?" Brian's voice cracked. "She would never..." "She already did," Emily said. "She is on a flight to Belize right now with her boyfriend Trent and 4.8 million of your money." Brian's phone buzzed again. Then again, he pulled it out. An Instagram notification. Chloe had posted a beach selfie with a shirtless man. The caption read, "Starting my detox era. Buy toxic energy." "I would say you got played," Emily said, watching his face crumble. "But honestly, you deserved each other." Brian looked around the room. At the FBI agent who had ruined his life, at the forensic auditor with her damning files, at his ex-wife, who he had dismissed as dead weight. He had been so sure he was the smartest person in every room. He had been so confident in his own superiority. And he had never seen any of this coming. "Agent Warren," Emily said, I believe you have paperwork for Mr. Thorne to sign. The agent approached with handcuffs. Brian Thorne, you are under arrest for wire fraud, corporate espionage, and violations of the Economic Espionage Act. You have the right to remain silent. As the cuffs clicked around his wrists, Brian looked at Emily one last time. How? He whispered. How did you do this? Emily leaned close. You forgot the first rule of chess, Brian. Protect your queen, because she is the most powerful piece on the board. She stepped back. And now the game is over. 1 week after Brian's arrest, Emily stood in a courtroom again. But this time, everything was different. Diana Cross presented the evidence methodically. Brian's manipulation of Lily through coached messages, the false claims of parental alienation, the restraining order obtained through deception, the federal charges now pending against him. Brian's new lawyer, a harried-looking public defender, had little to offer in response. Sebastian Cole had resigned the moment the FBI became involved. But the deciding moment came when Lily asked to speak. The judge looked surprised. Miss Thorne, this is highly irregular. I know, Your Honor. Lily's voice was steady. But I have something I need to say. In front of everyone. The judge nodded. You may proceed. Lily stood. She was wearing a simple blue dress. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she met the judge's eyes without flinching. I want to apologize to my mom. In front of everyone, the courtroom went silent. My dad told me things about my mom that were not true. He told me she did not want us. He told me she chose money over us. I believed him because I wanted to believe my dad was the good guy. She turned to face Emily. But then I watched, Mom. I watched you lose everything. Your house, your money, your reputation, and you never stopped fighting for us. You never gave up. Lily's voice cracked. Dad gave up on our family the second something better came along. You never did. She walked across the courtroom and wrapped her arms around Emily. I want to come home, Mom. Please, I am so sorry. Emily held her daughter, both of them crying. Mason jumped from his seat and ran to join the embrace. The judge cleared her throat. Given the evidence presented, this court finds that Mr. Brian Thorne engaged in deliberate parental alienation and fraudulent legal manipulation. Full custody is hereby awarded to Mrs. Emily Carter. Emily looked up through her tears. Thank you, Your Honor. As they left the courtroom, Mason tugged at Emily's hand. Mom, I have to tell you something. Remember the rose I saved from your garden? The one you hid in your closet? Mason smiled. It did not die. I replanted it at Grandpa's house when we visited. It grew. There's a whole bush now. Emily knelt down, pulling him close. You told me once that roses are tough, Mason said, that they can grow back from almost nothing if someone takes care of them. He hugged her tight. You are like a rose, Mom. 6 months later, Brian Thorne was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and illegal data trafficking. Emily stood across the street from the courthouse, watching the media swarm as Brian was led out in handcuffs. He looked nothing like the confident billionaire who had destroyed her in that divorce hearing. His designer suits were gone. His perfect hair was gray and unkempt. His eyes were hollow. He saw her standing there. For a moment their eyes met. Emily did not gloat. She did not smile. She did not wave. She just watched. Brian was loaded into a prison transport van. The doors closed. The van drove away. And just like that, it was over. Almost. 1 month after Brian's sentencing, news broke about Chloe Myers. Her paradise escape to Belize had ended abruptly when her credit cards were frozen. The $4.8 million she had stolen from Thorne Technologies was traced and seized by federal agents. Extradition papers arrived. Chloe was brought back to face charges as an accomplice to Brian's crimes. The news headline that Emily saved in a special folder on her phone read, Detox-era influencer arrested Mid-yoga retreat. Screams, "Do you know who I am?" at federal agents. Trent, the DJ boyfriend, gave an interview from Belize. "I did not know anything about the money," he said. "I thought she was rich from crypto or something. I am just here for the vibes." During Chloe's trial, another revelation emerged. She had been the one who leaked Brian's affair to the tabloids in the first place, trying to pressure him into leaving Emily faster. She had played everyone, and she had lost everything. 2 years later, Emily stood on the porch of a farmhouse in Oregon, watching the sun set over hills she had learned to call home. The house was modest but beautiful, purchased with her share of the Sterling Trust settlement, close enough to her father's care facility that she could visit every day. In the driveway, Lily was teaching Mason to drive. It was going poorly. "I think I hit the mailbox." Mason's voice carried across the evening air. "That is not the mailbox," Lily responded with exaggerated patience. "That is a trash can." "Oh, good." "So, I improved," Emily laughed. It was a sound that had taken her a long time to relearn. Her father wheeled onto the porch beside her, a blanket across his lap against the evening chill. "You did good, Emily," Marcus said quietly. "We did good, Dad." "No!" He shook his head. "I just opened the door. You walked through it." He looked out at the grandchildren he had almost lost. "I am proud of you, sweetheart. Your mother would be too." A car pulled into the driveway. Maggie Douglas stepped out, waving a bottle of champagne. "You are not going to believe this," she called out. "What now?" Maggie climbed the porch steps, grinning. "Remember how you donated most of the Thorntech settlement to digital privacy advocacy?" Emily nodded. It had felt right. She did not want Brian's dirty money. She wanted to turn it into something good. The foundation you started, the Carter Digital Rights Foundation, just received a $10 million grant from the federal government. They want you to advise on new data privacy legislation. Emily, they want you in Washington. Emily stared at her. "Me, I am a nurse. I am a mom. I do not know anything about—" "You know more than anyone," Maggie interrupted. "You lived it. You exposed it. You fixed it." Marcus chuckled beside her. "The Queen does not just protect the king, Emily. Sometimes she takes the whole board." The next morning, Emily was in her garden, planting roses. The cutting that Mason had saved, the one that had survived against all odds in his closet, had been divided again and again. Now there were rows of bushes, each one a testament to what could grow from near death. Lily knelt beside her, hands dirty, working a cutting into the soil. "Mom, can I ask you something? Anything." "How did you do it?" Lily asked quietly. "When everything fell apart. When you lost us, lost the money, lost everything. How did you keep going?" Emily sat back, considering the question. "I did not keep going because I was strong," she said finally. "I kept going because I did not have any other choice. And then I found people who believed in me when I could not believe in myself. Your grandfather, Maggie, Diana, Carla, they held me up until I could stand on my own." She handed Lily a rose cutting. "You know what a rose needs to grow? Sunlight? Water? Roots," Emily said. "Deep roots." "And you know what makes roots grow deeper?" Lily shook her head. "Storms. The hard times force the roots down, down into the soil, until nothing can pull them out." Emily looked at her daughter, at this young woman who had been used as a weapon against her and had found the courage to choose love over lies. "We survived a storm, baby. And look at our roots now." They planted together in comfortable silence. Far away in Oregon, in a federal correctional facility, Brian Thorne sat alone in his cell. He was not the man he had been. The designer suits were replaced by khaki uniforms. The penthouse views were replaced by concrete walls. The champagne celebrations were replaced by institutional meals and the endless, empty hours of incarceration. A guard approached his cell. Thorn, you got mail. Brian took the small package without enthusiasm. He received little mail. Sebastian Cole had vanished. His so-called friends had disappeared the moment his money did. Even his own parents, who had loved his success more than they loved him, rarely wrote. He opened the package. Inside was a chess piece, a king carved from dark walnut. The crown at the top was broken off, leaving a jagged scar in the wood. There was a letter. Brian. A king without his queen is just a piece of wood waiting to be toppled. I am not writing to gloat. I am writing to teach. You had everything, a wife who loved you, children who adored you, a company built on genius that was not yours. All you had to do was be kind, but you could not, because you were empty, and empty men always destroy what they cannot fill. Keep this king. Let it remind you of what you sacrificed for a crown you were never meant to wear. The game is over, Brian. Marcus Sterling. Brian read the postscript 3 times. P.S. Emily wanted me to tell you. She forgives you, not for your sake, for hers. Forgiveness, she says, is how she took her power back. Brian held the broken king in his palm. He thought about the mansion he had lost, the company that bore his name but was never truly his, the woman he had discarded, like trash, who had risen from the ashes to become something greater than he could ever imagine. He thought about Lily and Mason, who he had tried to turn into weapons, and who had chosen their mother over him. He thought about all the games he had played, all the people he had used, all the victories he had celebrated. And for the first time in his life, Brian Thorne understood. He had won every battle, but he had lost the only war that mattered. He had lost it the moment he decided that power was more important than love, the moment he traded his queen for a crown, and now he sat alone, in a cell, holding a broken king, while somewhere in Oregon, the woman he had thrown away was planting roses with the children he would never hold again. The game was over, and he had played it alone. In Oregon, the sun set over Emily's farmhouse. The roses swayed in the evening breeze. Lily and Mason chased fireflies across the lawn while Marcus watched from the porch, wrapped in blankets, smiling. Emily stood in her garden, holding the queen her father had given her so long ago. The dark walnut was warm in her palm, worn smooth by generations of hands. She looked at the life she had built from the ruins of the one that was stolen from her. She looked at her children, whole and healing. She looked at her father, proud and peaceful in his final years. She looked at the roses that had survived against all odds. And she understood something she wished she could tell every woman who had ever been where she was. The storm does not destroy you. The storm reveals you. It shows you what you are made of. It forces your roots deeper. It strips away everything that does not matter until only the essential remains. And when the storm passes, when you are still standing, you discover something remarkable. You are not the person you were before. You are stronger. If you are listening to this, Emily thought, sending the words out into the universe for every woman who needed them, and you are in the middle of your storm, losing everything, fighting alone, wondering if it is even worth it, I want you to know, it is. You are worth fighting for. Your children are worth fighting for. Your dignity is worth fighting for. Find your people. Document everything. And remember, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. Do not let anyone make you forget that. Emily placed the queen piece on the porch railing, watching it catch the last light of the setting sun. Then she walked across the lawn to join her children, leaving the broken king in Brian's hands and the future in her own. Now, if stories like this speak to your soul, if you want more tales of women who refuse to stay broken, I would love for you to join this community. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had a moment where someone underestimated you and lived to regret it? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the ones I tell. If you know a woman who needs to hear this message today, share this video with her. Sometimes the story is exactly the reminder someone needs that they are stronger than they think. Now, let us begin. This is The Broken King,